Well, welcome. This little series is called Coffee with Pops. I'm Pops, and I have my coffee. These little stories last about as long as my cup of coffee does. So today, we're going to talk a little bit about an adventure with my grandfather, Cal Simmons, who lived on our property up in Bandon, Oregon. His house was to the far west of our property, and he was very proud to tell people that he built his house for $300. It was quite the amazing piece of property, and I'm going to straighten you up a little bit. There. Hopefully that'll make it a little bit straighter. Anyway, he was very proud to tell people that he built his house for $300. He was a very innovative man. He was born in Kansas, and when he was 12 years old, he rode a train out to Oregon and got off the train in Portland, and then finally made his way down to an area around Diamond Lake, Oregon, where he ended up being a telegraph wire maintenance man. His cabin was 8 by 10, and when he was 14 years old, he was responsible for 1 mile of telegraph wire to the north of his cabin, and then 1 mile of telegraph wire to the south of his cabin. He'd get up in the morning, choose which direction he was going to start, walk the mile. If the telegraph wire was down, he would repair it. He would return to his cabin for lunch and then walk to the north and repair any damage to the cable going north. Very self-sufficient young man at 14. Each Friday, a supply wagon would come through and check on him, make sure that he was doing okay. They provided him with flour and salt, some lard, but it was up to him to grow his own vegetables and take care of them. It was his constant desire to go out and get food, either from catching fish in the lake or a stream, or shooting a deer or rabbits or whatever else he could manage to put on the ground and put on the table. As a kid, when I was growing up in Bandon, Oregon, a visit to his house was always educational. I remember one year I went down to ask him if I could borrow a gun to go deer hunting. And he said, absolutely. And he gestured to the wall where there was probably 15 different long rifles of various calibers. So, having gone through hunter's safety course, I dutifully took down a lever action rifle and proceeded to check to make sure that there was not a cartridge in the chamber, and as I levered down, the bullet came flying out. I said, Grandpa, this gun's loaded. He said, well, Kevin, they're all loaded. I said, wow. And he said, Kevin, do you know what a rifle is that's not loaded? I said, no, and he said, a stick. So all of his guns on that wall were loaded. Anyway, several years later, he called me one afternoon when I was up at our house, and he said, would you please come down? I have a bit of a project for you. So I hopped on my motorcycle and rode the width of our property and walked into Grandpa's house and said, what's up? He said, well, there's a yearling deer dead at the base of that apple tree. It was about 150 yards from the back porch of his house. I said, well, Grandpa, how do you know that there's a deer underneath that tree? He said, well, Kevin, I shot it. I said, really? With what? He showed me his M1 carbine, open sight. He had offhanded, made a 150-yard shot at the age of 72 and hit the deer right behind the ear. He said, go down and get the deer, take it down to the shed, field dress it, and I'll be down to help cut it up. I said, okay, Grandpa. And I walked down, and sure enough, here was a little doe dead at the base of the tree. So that afternoon I spent time with my grandfather taking care of some venison that we later had for dinner. Growing up on a cranberry farm was always exciting. It was fun. I could go play in the creek. I could play with my friends. It was quite an experience. When I was 10 years old, I was down next to the creek one day, and unfortunately for me, there were a lot of yellow jackets around the creek, and they had built a nest right next to where I was standing by the creek. I didn't know it. I had on a very interesting outfit with sandals and some very thick socks and some shorts and a shirt, and sure enough, I stepped right on that yellow jacket nest, and they came swarming out. And as they were stinging me, they were biting me, and they got themselves unwittingly ensnared in my socks. And so not only were they trying to get themselves out of my socks, but they were also stinging me at the same time. I made a beeline for home, and it took me a long time to get there. And by the time I did get there, I had over 30 welts all over my legs and my face and my hands. So sometimes playing in the cranberry bogs or around the cranberry bogs could be pretty hazardous to your health. When I was about 11 years old, my father offered me a job cleaning ditch. Cranberry bogs are a low-lying area that had a combination of sand and peat, and these vines were planted in anywhere from 3/4 of an acre to an acre and a half area. And the cranberries were susceptible to rot since they are a wood vine, and to prevent that from happening, there were ditches that went around each one of the bogs. My job was to take a wheelbarrow and a 2x12, 14 foot long, and set the 2x12 out on the bog next to the ditch, and then I would move the wheelbarrow as I was cleaning the ditch, taking the stuff out of it with the shovel, and then throwing it into the wheelbarrow, and when it was full, walking the wheelbarrow out of the cranberry bog and dumping it someplace off in the brush. It was kind of hard work, especially when you ran across a plant called a tussock, which has very deep roots and is just amazingly difficult to extricate from the ground. Anyway, I did that for many years, but I wasn't real proficient at it, because when I came home from school, generally I'd get off the bus and walk home about a half mile down a dirt road, and once I got home, I always knew where my father's favorite coconut cookies were hidden. And oh boy, it was just wonderful to get a glass of milk, some coconut cookies, and some peanut butter, and spread the peanut butter on the coconut cookie, and then put it together for a coconut peanut butter cookie sandwich. Of course, after you eat so many of those, you're pretty tired, so I would go down and start cleaning ditch, and then inevitably I'd lay down on the bank and take a nap. Oh, look at the time. We're just about done with this version. I hope you enjoy it, and I'll be back. I'm Pops, and this is Pops and Coffee Time.